Well, welcome back to Tech Tips, Fixes and More. Sorry that I haven't had any videos out in the last little while. Just seems like this hasn't been the season for a lot of projects or things to fix, and I really haven't been getting that much in. I have had some nice emails from people that have watched my videos and some comments. I appreciate that. Very interesting stuff, and I was glad to be able to help a few of you that had similar problems with some of the equipment that I've worked on in the past, and always happy to help if I can. Today I actually have a 24-channel mixing board. It's a Mackie board. It's an older board. It's analog in operation. The model number is an SR24-4. This belongs to our church actually, and we used this board for a number of years before we went to a digital board. It worked pretty good, and it's got some nice features. It did get to the point where we were thinking we were getting some noise and some intermittence happening in here. And so I did set it up here a while back and did a quick check on this thing, and there are some pots in here that are noisy. They crackle when you turn them, and so that needs to be cleaned for sure. And I'm going to do some other testing on here, and just to make sure that everything is working. I hope to use this board out at our camp this summer. We do a camp out of our church for inner city kids, and we do some music and different things out there, and so we needed a few more channels, and so we thought we may try this board if we can get everything operating properly. And at some point in the future maybe I'll show you the equipment that we use out there. It seems to work okay. So I'm going to jump into this. I have to take the back off and get in there to the pots, and the first thing we're going to do is spray those pots and clean them, and while we're doing that we'll check for noise, and then we'll go from there. So stay tuned. Okay, so this looks like one of those situations where in order to get this thing apart and actually get some spray into these pots, I'm going to have to take every knob off the top and take every nut off every pot in order to get these large printed circuit boards off, which is always a fun part of working on musical instrument equipment, especially the older stuff, and I'm not sure how old this is, but it's probably a fair number of years old. And that's the way they used to build them. You would have to take all this stuff off and then start the troubleshooting process, and then of course with no knobs on it you don't know what's what. It always makes it harder to work on. But that's what we got, so I guess that's what I'm going to start doing here. That's a lot of pots to take off, but they do pull off pretty easy. Some of the I've worked on some equipment where the pots were so hard to take off that you had to have basically a claw bar. I once made a special knob puller using a small claw bar and filing out the notch in it so that it would go under the pots and you could pry them up, which worked, except for you had to be careful because it tended to pull the shafts right out of the pot if for some reason the knob was stuck on there. So I'm trying to remember exactly how we used these track controls. It's been a while. I may have to look back at the manual and refresh my memory. And these should pop off as well. Now, this is one thing about faders, linear faders. And if you have some advanced knowledge that I don't have about faders, I'd appreciate hearing in the comments. My experience with these faders is that it's a very risky business to try and clean these things. Times in the past when I tried to use even a good quality pot cleaner on these, what happened was it washed all the lubrication out of them. And when I was done, they just did not run smoothly, and that's the last thing you want on a fader, on a board. You want these things to slide really nicely so that when you're making your adjustment, you can just make just a slight adjustment. And if you start to push them up and they catch, and then all of a sudden you push a little harder and they go quite a bit, that's not going to work well with trying to get a nice fine-tuned mix. So after a while I just quit trying to clean pots, and I've heard people say that it's better to just replace them if they get into bad shape. Now surely there must be a way to clean them properly and keep the lubrication working properly, but it's been so long since I worked on one of these that I don't really know what the final answer is on that, so be happy to hear from you. here from when I used to use it. It says monitor masters. So these aux send masters, this is what we used for our monitors, and I don't know if we ever used all 6 of them for monitors, but I think we maybe had as many as 4 of these outputs sent to monitors. At that time, of course, we were using wedge monitors and separate amplifiers. That's we try and minimize the use of that. Nowadays we use in-ear monitors, and we have separate monitor mixers for each person. Behringer makes a nice in-ear monitoring system where each person gets a 16-channel mixer, and it has a lot of features. It will allow everybody to set their own monitor mix in their ears, and it just cuts down on the amount of sound on stage significantly. It makes it so much easier for the sound guy to be able to get a mix without having to turn up monitors and have a lot of sound on stage that results in typically feedback. Time to take another picture or two. These 2 connectors are for the power supply. Go. Okay, so here we have the board out in the open, and I'm just taking a look at these pots. They seem fairly sealed up. I don't know how much cleaner I'm going to get inside there. So I took a little time and looked online to see if there were any hints or tips from other people who have cleaned the pots on these particular units, and I actually couldn't find much. So I'm going to try to clean these up. As you can see, these pots are quite enclosed. A lot of less expensive potentiometers have openings on the sides which allow you to spray cleaner and lubricant inside. These ones don't really have that. It may be possible to put some liquid down into around the actual shaft of the pot. So I'm going to see if I can do that. It looks like it's going in there. Whether it's actually getting onto the wiper or the actual resistance element is hard to tell, but it does seem to be turning more easily and smoothly. This particular contact cleaner is called Neutral, and it's pretty good. It's got, it's not only a cleaner, but it's actually got a lubricant in it. There's a lot of pots here, so probably can't use too much on each. I'll be running through a few cans of this. Okay, so I reconnected the power supply to this thing and plugged it into my amplifier. It's kind of out of sight down here. It's my little bass amp out here. And I cranked up the volume quite a lot, fed the master output from the board into that, just so I could hear whether or not there was any noise coming from the pots. Now that I've cleaned some of them, I cleaned the first half of them, and some of them are fine, some are not so fine. I think I found a couple here that were still pretty noisy. Now, the amount of noise, hopefully you can hear that, is more than you would normally get out of this board because I've got it cranked up pretty high. But at least you can tell from that whether or not there's any noise in the pot. I don't know if that's coming through, but as I turn it up, you can hear the pot making noise. This one, not so much. When you turn it up a lot, you're getting a lot of hiss, but it's not so much noise from the pot itself. There's one. That's got some noise in it. And maybe I'll try cleaning that one. Don't know if I can get anything in there while it's partially apart and it's in behind, but I'll try. I think it's working very well this way. I think I have to take the board right out, but these first ones that I did before, there's hiss, but not a lot of noise from the pot. That one's still a little noisy. That one's pretty good. A little noise on that one. So I'm going to try this again, turn off the power and try and get some more spray in there. I don't think I'm getting as much spray in as I would like into the, right onto the wipers. So as usual, working on one of these is a learning experience, and usually when I work on a new piece of equipment that I haven't worked on before, I'll first go online and do some searching, and I did a little of that, but I decided to do a deeper dive as I got into this. I had sprayed the trim pots across the top here and ran them back and forth, and I could tell that the contact cleaner, which has a lubricant in it, was penetrating at least down into the mechanical level, because these were starting to run more freely. But that's not necessarily a good sign, because that means that what is happening is you're washing out the lubricant that's in there, and there's no guarantee that the cleaner is actually getting down to the carbon trace inside the pot. Now maybe, because some of these looked like they were less noisy as I went on. But when I went online and did a deeper dive on this, I found a number of people online who had talked about these particular boards and these pots which are sealed, and often saying that it's not a good idea to actually spray them because of that washing the lubricant out, and that it doesn't necessarily get the cleaner where it needs to go. And so I'm a little hesitant to go through and spray all of these pots, clean out the lubricant, and not necessarily accomplish that much. So I've decided to do a bit of a compromise on this. I went through and I sprayed all of the switches, which I know some of these switches were dirty. Some of them were even so dirty that when you would punch them in, they would not actually switch. So I cleaned all of these switches. Some of them are enables, and some of them are for applying the signal to different auxiliary outputs. So I've cleaned up all of the switches. I've cleaned all of the trim pots at the top, and I think I'm going to leave the rest of these pots and just put it back together and test it a bit further, and do some just working the pots and see if I can just clean them up that way. So we'll do that, and we'll see what happens. Also, the sliders here, I've cleaned some dirt off the external and so on, but as I mentioned before, I'm really reluctant to spray the internals of them. Okay, so I've turned the thing back on. I've checked all of the gain pots, and I've checked all of the sliders, and after working them a bit, they are not making noise. The gain pots, when you turn them all the way up, there's a bit of noise in the board, but that's because I have the output cranked up a lot. So I think this is probably the best I can do. The main thing is that when you set your gain pot, you don't want it to be cutting in and out or crackling. And as I turn that up or down, it's not. And when I put it in one position, it seems to be okay. All of these sliders are sliding smoothly, and they're not crackling. So that might be the best we can hope for. Some of the other pots, it's possible they're a bit dirty, but I think all I can do is run them up and down and try and clean them just by moving them back and forth. So I've got this all back together, put on all 300 knobs, and powered it up, tested it out. All the inputs are working, both main outputs are working. The tone controls are working, the faders are all working. There were a couple that seemed like they may have been a little flaky. I worked them back and forth a little bit more, and they seem to clear up. So I think the status of this board at this point is that it's an old board. It probably is going to give more trouble in the future unless we were to do a massive refit of sliders and some of the pots, and that's just not worth doing. Wouldn't be worth the time or the cost of the parts. So I think it's in good enough shape that I'm going to be able to use it for the purpose that I have for it, and there may be some channels I have to not use, but I have more than enough channels for what I'm going to plan on using it for this summer. So I think that's as good as we can get this one, and I think we'll call it a wrap on this one. Thanks for tuning in and watching this, and thanks for any comments you might have. Thanks for any likes, and we'll try and come up with some other projects to do over the next while and get some more videos out to you.